Hello, everyone, and welcome to COTE Youth 2021. I am Roxanne Brizan-Martin, coordinator of the COTE Youth events. The COTE Youth events forms part of the pre-conference of the economy activities, which is the annual landmark event of the Department of Economics. This year, the COTE Youth activities, which includes this armchair discussion, debate competitions, and a graduate poster competition, will be conducted on 4 days via the virtual platform. This armchair discussion has become a highlight of the COTE Youth events since its introduction 4 years ago. The theme for this year's youth activities, Accelerating Caribbean Development, a youth-centric development approach, is a call for action and a call to action in which the people of the Caribbean region, and in particular, Caribbean youth, are placed at the center of the development dialogue for a stronger, more sustainable, resilient, inclusive, and equitable development path. Addressing the fallouts of the COVID-19 pandemic requires the adoption of people-centric planning, one in which the voices of the region's youth can be heard and valued. So Arthur Lewis highlighted that good economics begins with a concern for the conditions under which people live, which is critical in moving forward. This forum provides an opportunity to explore authentic youth engagement, which can benefit participants on a personal level as well as in their communities. Utilizing meaningful youth participation can contribute to addressing or adequately addressing their needs and interests through structured programs and policies. It is our hope that you enjoy and actively participate through the discussion in today's events, and we look forward to your continued support and participation. I would now like to welcome the head of our Department of Economics, Dr. Anne-Marie Mohammed, to bring a few welcome remarks, followed by a word from our sponsor.
Thank you very much. Dr. Roxanne Brizan-Martin, coordinator of the COTE Youth events, and the other members of this COTE Youth events committee. Ms. Jeanette Watts, President, Economic Society of the UWI St. Augustine, and other members of the society. Ms. Jillian Benjamin, Acting Head, Brand and Marketing, representing First Citizens Bank, the main sponsor for the COTE Youth events. Moderator, Dr. Kellon Bubb, host of the Bubb Report. Panelists of the 2020 COTE Armchair discussion, members of the viewing audience, members of the media. Good afternoon. It is my immense pleasure to bring you greetings on behalf of the Department of Economics. As some of you may know, the COTE Youth event forms part of the pre-conference activities of COTE, which is the conference of the economy. Each year, the department, through COTE, provides a platform whereby national, regional, and some international economic and development issues can be brought forward and explored, thus creating an environment in which meaningful dialogue is encouraged and collective solutions can be advanced. As such, the conference is designed to be both useful and pragmatic for decision and policy makers, as well as technocrats, private sector representatives, academics, and students with respect to issues in the Caribbean economy. The Youth Armchair discussion is a pre-conference activity, and it's aimed at giving youth a voice and a place in our annual COTE conference. This event is has joined the other slate of youth events, which is the debate and the graphic poster events in 2018. And it continues to be a feature on the secondary and tertiary institutions event calendar. We are proud to note that the COTE Youth event started in 2011 and continues. This afternoon's armchair discussion, the theme, as you would have heard, is Accelerating Caribbean Development, a youth-centric development approach. But before we go further, I would like to draw your attention to, and for noting in your calendars, the upcoming youth events. The COTE 2021 Youth Knockoff Debate Competition will be held on Thursday, October 21st, between the hours of 12 noon and 4 p.m. Youth Debate Finals will be held on Thursday, November 11th, between 1 and 4 p.m. The Graduate Graphic Poster Competition will be held on 22nd November, between the hours of 1 and 4. And certainly not to be left out is the conference itself. It will be held between the 24th to 26th November, and we'd like to point out that it's free to our students and it's also free to secondary school students. Today's event is proudly sponsored by First Citizens Bank. The FCB is one of the leading financial service groups in Trinidad and Tobago, and through its focus on corporate social responsibility, committed itself to positively engaging and impacting communities across all levels of the society. One of the key areas of focus for the First Citizens corporate social responsibility is that of youth and education. The support of FCB in meaningful youth engagement and programs such as is offered through the COTE Youth events show their commitment to supporting and engaging youth to positively impact their social environment. We want to thank FCB for their continued support of these events. And in that light, I will now welcome Ms. Gillian Benjamin, Acting Head, Brand and Marketing, to deliver a few remarks and greetings on behalf of First Citizens Bank. Thank you. Ms. Benjamin.
Good day. Dr. Amri Mohammed, Head of Department of Economics. Dr. Roxanne Rizan Martin, Coordinator, COTE Youth Events, and other members of the COTE Youth Events Committee. Ms. Johnny Watts, President, Economic Society of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and other members of the Society. Participants of the 2021 COTE Armchair discussion, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. One can hardly deny that there's an immense degree of natural energy and enthusiasm that young people bring to a space. It is therefore always a pleasure for us at First Citizens to champion and support youth-related initiatives, in this instance, COTE 2021 youth activities. Presented on the heels of our 2021 National Budget Statement, we are excited at the prospects of the new ideas and actions that will emerge from today's armchair discussion in helping us to realize our vision for economic development. After all, if our eyes are set on youth-centric regional development, we must be willing not only to include youth in the conversation, but ensure that our developmental approach is both targeted towards and driven by young people themselves. Consequently, this means that collectively, we share the critical responsibility of accounting for all youth. Yes, we are excited that by your very participation in this discussion, you are representative of the many young people who are willing to capitalize on opportunities for personal and educational development, on whom we can count to change our environment. However, we must be careful that at the same time, we are not guilty of excluding those who may not be as eager, academically inclined, or economically equipped. For instance, our country's hope is that young people like yourselves will play a critical role in the digitalization of our economy. Yet according to the Ministry of Education, 46,000 of your peers nationwide have never logged in to online school, And I dare say these statistics should tell us more about the actual digital divide. While many have adapted and thrived in a virtual environment, many others remain alienated. We are therefore dependent on moving some aspects of our country forward without the support of a generation who unfortunately are not yet 100% on board. So what will it take for us to get there? And more importantly, which of us are willing to get the job done? In essence, it will take a sustained, systemic effort on all our parts, in everything from curriculum development and social investment programs to employment opportunities and even corporate social responsibility initiatives. To draw from our own example as a socially responsible citizen, First Citizens is constantly reviewing and restructuring our programs to ensure that there are ample opportunities for as many young people as possible in a variety of spheres. These include the culture and creative industries, where we focus on initiatives like the First Citizens National Poetry Slam, in sport through the First Citizens Junior Sportsman and Sportswoman of the Year Award, in gender via our Girls First Festival and the Boys Symposium, and of course in academics and life skill through initiatives such as COTE. We do this so that our various investment in young people will position them to be active contributors to our economic growth. And so it is with pleasure we partner with the UWI's Department of Economics once more, as we place youth at the forefront of change and stimulate a level of discourse and analysis that will yield sustainable solutions for our country and for the Caribbean by extension. On behalf of First Citizens, we wish you a productive session today, and we look forward to an exciting edition of COTE 2021 Youth Activities. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benjamin. Ms. Janelle Watts, the President of the Economic Society of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, will now give some brief remarks.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Dr. St. Martin, Dr. Mohammed, Ms. Benjamin, Dr. Bubb. My name is Janelle Watts. I'm the President of the Economic Society of UWI St. Augustine. And on behalf of the Economic Society, I just want to welcome our contributors, our participants, and everyone tuned in here today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're hosting a virtual armchair discussion, which marks the beginning of our annual COTE Youth Event Series. And personally, I just want to commend everyone involved in the organization and planning of this event. You guys did a phenomenal job, as always. Today, we have a dynamic panel of speakers here to discuss and educate you guys on a variety of topics, some of which of these speakers are from our very own UWI St. Augustine campus, Department of Economics, and our Economic Society. And that's honestly one of the things that I love about COTE. It's the integration of speakers, both students and experienced professionals in the field of economics, coming together to bring forth contributions in various topics and expand our knowledge. And it's really an amazing experience. The interaction and the takeaway from it all is so rich and insightful. Another thing I really admire about this series of events is the youth participation and exposure, because here we give them a platform to contribute to the field of economics. We challenge them to think outside the box, and that leads to their development, both personally and academically. And it's that stimulation for growth and development what we here at the Economic Society truly support. We really believe in the holistic and academic development of our members who are like a family. Here, we're like a family, and we support everyone on their journey throughout their degree to ensure that they reach their maximum potential through various events and activities that are aimed at really giving them the opportunities to make their contributions and their voices heard as young budding economists and leaders in our society, a society so plagued with problems, that we really ought to aspire to be the solution finders to mitigate these issues and reshape our futures to a more sustainable and healthier one. So once again, we welcome you. We hope that we can keep your attention and your excitement throughout the series of events. We hope that the knowledge and the insight you take away from our speakers here will be very helpful, appreciated, and applicable. So do leave your comments, do ask your questions at the end. We'll be more than happy to answer you and get your feedback. So sit tight and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Janair. We would now have a few ads from our sponsors.
Stop your bow, Mr. Fiddler. Oh, ha, hi. This country so colorful and truly diverse. We're doing our best to put TNT first. Youth success through advancement, we encourage. We proudly supporting the rich cultural heritage, promoting development in the sporting arena, and empowering women for equality of gender. We sustaining the environment and strengthening the society. First citizens helping paint a brighter TNT. Drag your bow, Mr. Fiddler.
Some of the most special things in life take time to come to fruition. And when they do, the rewards can enrich lives for generations to come. The wait is so worth it. Contact the UTC today and get growing.
In the blink of an eye, the world changed forever.
El gobierno dará a conocer en las próximas horas una serie de medidas sanitarias y económicas para seguir enfrentando la pandemia.
Una reunión con el presidente y el jefe de gobierno.
A global crisis of unprecedented proportions, from which no country has escaped. In Latin America, we have faced many challenging times, some more difficult than others. But today, we all understand that solidarity is our biggest strength. "50 years ago, CAF was created with a mission. 5 Andean countries united to promote sustainable development and regional integration, thus improving quality of life and boosting productivity. Today, we are composed by 19 countries and account for over 600 million people. And despite the distance and the barriers that separate us, we must work more united than ever, because only together we will succeed. The world will not be the same, but now we have the opportunity to build an even better one, a more harmonious, cleaner, and efficient planet. And for the challenges that lie ahead, at CAF, we want to say 3 words. Here we are. To build together a region of opportunities, especially for the most vulnerable ones, with infrastructure that improves quality of life and increases connectivity. A region of vibrant cities, of entrepreneurs and businesses committed to their communities, of societies respectful with the natural world that we all share and must care for. At CAF, we have walked along a region for 50 years on its road to progress. Now more than ever, here we are, and here we will remain, firm in our commitment of being the development bank of Latin America.
So now we would have a spoken word by a spoken word poet, Mr. Joel Phillips.
5 reasons why I love my auntie. 1, I think she's made of magic. Not sure if it's Black Girl or Obia, but I know she on a different wavelength, the way she could. Her way to rain cloud from miles away. She don't need Sigoni to show she rain when she sees thunderstorms in treeways too. She always knows what to say. Her lips carry symphonies similar to Shakespearean sonnets such as, "Hey, your mother say you can touch that or when I'm dead, then you're gonna listen." Because my auntie knows pain. Only a woman like her could bring any man to his knees. We call her Tropical Storm, the way she uproots her ex-men from the family tree 3. I feel everybody have an auntie living foreign. One who find that one island living boring, so she cross Atlantic and Caribbean seas for new countries to experience Hurricane Tanti. Though Canada was too cold for Sandy, Maria had fun in Dominica. They weren't expecting her on the scene, but she definitely made the 2017. Flora had her dream going away party in Trinbago. She just killer parties, though I don't think 24 attendees knew that. They're probably in one big group chat, plotting the only remittance they given their hard head cheering is a reality check. If she wills to make the child respect the village that racy, she'll have no problem to wreck and pillage the village. When it rains, it pours. But isn't that what auntie's for? If these women didn't bring hell's fury forth, then who else will we be waiting for? I mean, if auntie decides to parang by we for a change, would God still be a Trini? Would we stay bold as auntie blows away the upholstery we fail to uphold? Auntie too nice to we. Always sparing Trinidad the rod and giving our brothers wee licks. But she nice for what? If the want to persist blows through chances 1 to 6, God, we've been ducking this cocktail for years. But if the only way we learn is when auntie mangles the place, then what's next should be good for both Ganda and Drake. She could panda and fake and lie and say everything's fine. But it's no use standing idly by when it's her nephew high in the sky 5. If we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. We can't bucket and pail and wail to get bailed out again. We've been blind for too long. We wrong for not listening to Auntie Irma, Maria, Katrina. We can confirm and see a trend for what is to come, but we jamming still. Well, will we stay blind when the galvanized roof fall in our garden? When it's we auntie, we embalming, will we stop being so hardened? Even if we can't smell the rain, we can plan for it. We have the opportunity now, let's take it. Have a first aid kit, water, canned foods ready, as simple as a tin of cricks. Lay the bricks, plant the foundation, fortify yourself so when auntie pop out, we don't get hit for. 6. My auntie knows how to deal with children, husbands, and hurricanes. Somehow she finds a way to stand tall. Even when Peter pays for Paul, she's prepared for all, so she's not scared when even the mighty kneel. We need to start listening to our aunties. Because who do here?
Okay, at this point, it is with great pleasure I introduce the moderator of this afternoon's event, Dr. Kellon Bubb. Dr. Kellon Bubb is a Caribbean-American health communications scholar and professor who is originally from Pomrose, Grenada, and a past student of the Presentation Brothers College in St. George's, Grenada. He worked as a broadcast journalist and news producer before immigrating to the United States. Dr. Bubb also served as a middle school and ESL educator in Tapai, Taiwan, and Brooklyn, New York. He earned a PhD in communications, culture, and media studies from Howard University with a health communication and culture concentration. He is an associate professor of media and communications at Montgomery College in the Washington, D.C. area. His health communication research focus seeks to make sense of the health impacts of climate change on communities of color and developing countries in the global south. He uses a diverse range of research approaches to understand how traditionally marginalized and underrepresented groups make sense of the health impacts of climate change in their communities. Bubb's academic interests also include development communication and exploring mainstream media representations of people of African descent in the Black Atlantic. Dr. Bubb is also a 2021 Edward Boucher Scholar. The Edward Boucher Honor Society recognizes outstanding scholarly achievement among minority scholars. This society also promotes diversity and excellence in doctoral education and the professorate. He also won a top paper award at the 2021 Eastern Communication Association Conference and has represented Howard University at several regional and international conferences. Dr. Bubb is also in the process of co-authoring his first book titled African Media Industries in the Era of Digitization and Globalization, which focuses on African media digitization and democratization in the 21st century. Dr. Bubb enjoys hosting the Bubb Report digital show, community volunteerism, traveling, research, reading, and writing. Welcome, Dr. Bubb, and we thank you for being here with us today.
Good afternoon, Dr. Brizan and Martin, and it's certainly a pleasure to be hosting and facilitating today's youth forum. It's always a pleasure to give back to the region that has given me so much. I've had educators from diverse places as Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Jamaica. They were all my high school educators, and so I consider myself a product of the Caribbean, and it is only fitting that I serve the Caribbean in whatever capacity that I can. Certainly, I wish to thank the UE St. Augustine for the opportunity presented to your humble servant to moderate today's virtual armchair discussion, which seeks to think about ways of accelerating Caribbean development through a youth-centric development approach. Of course, at this time, I want to take the opportunity to introduce our cadre of young and talented and bright panelists who are indeed the future of the Caribbean region. They say the youth is the future, and I believe the children are our future, and that rings true in this period where we are witnessing significant generational change and transformation. And of course, our first panel, we have a panel of 5 young people here, and I would want to introduce our first panelist here. That is Sage Mitchell, and she attends the Swaha Hindu College, where she studies business. Although the expectation of such a student may be to open their own business one day, she aspires to become a lawyer. When she's not studying, her guilty pleasure is being totally engrossed in a Netflix series. The one sparking her interest lately and in alignment with her ambition is the show Suits. Then we have Gerald Edwards. Gerald Edwards is an ambitious student completing his last year at Presentation College, Chaguanas, who aspires to become an entrepreneur and corporate lawyer. He enjoys debate, football, and long distance running. He's excited to take this opportunity by the reins, address the current issues of our economy, and hopefully share insights on possible solutions. Then we have Varsha Ramdeo, who is currently a final year student pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Economics with a minor in International Relations at the University of the West Indies at the St. Augustine campus. In 2019, she successfully completed an internship at the Ministry of Finance, Economic Management Division, in which most of her training was conducted in the real sector, which is the energy sector, in addition to the non-energy sector. She has also assisted in the coordination of Fitch credit rating as part of her duties as part of the annual review of Trinidad and Tobago's sovereign credit rating for that year. Then we have Lorenzo Sahadeo, who hails from San Fernando in Trinidad and Tobago, where he spent his 34 years of life. He is currently pursuing an associate's degree in management at UE Roytech. His background is in petroleum engineering with over 12 years of experience in the oil and gas sector. He enjoys new challenges and tries to make the best of every opportunity. And finally, we have Gershom Byng, who is here from the University of the Southern Caribbean. He's representing that institution today. And he's a final year student of business administration at the institution and has made a lifelong commitment to the development of youth in and around his community and by extension in the wider Caribbean region. As the founder of the Golden Eagle Group, an events management and youth entertainment platform, he has made enormous contributions to the contemporary gospel entertainment scene in the region with the creation of the Final Generation concert series, Praise Break, GE Beach, Games, Online Quarantine concert series, and other groundbreaking initiatives. Additionally, his contributions in the realm of public service has not gone unnoticed. For the last decade, he's been deeply engaged with the Love Until Foundation in helping youth from impoverished backgrounds and difficult socioeconomic situations. As a youth leader and innovator, he continues to develop new ways of engaging the youth throughout Trinidad and Tobago, considering himself as nothing more than a humble facilitator of social progress in his community. So at this time, what I want to do is to give each panelist an opportunity to give us some brief opening remarks. So we would want to keep those opening remarks to around 10 minutes, and then we will get into the armchair discussion for the day. But Sage, I want to begin with you with some opening remarks, please.
Thank you so much, moderator. It's such a pleasure to be here speaking with you all on a topic that's so relevant in so many of our lives, if not all of our lives. So today I will be discussing, to a certain degree, the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic on education and training, spotlighting this phenomenon as relating to youths within the Caribbean region, and discovering the probability of accelerated development in the face of these challenging times. Nowadays, people have learned the genuine importance of education for those of all backgrounds, and public, primary, and secondary education is freely available to the majority of Caribbean youth. Technological advancements, among other factors, have resulted in the need for individuals to develop relevant skills to be efficient in certain jobs and fields, further inclining the focus on higher education. As we find ourselves deeply submerged into a technological era, more and more skills in technology are not only desirable, but extremely necessary to keep up with the evolving times. As a result, courses such as computer literacy have been popularized, especially for those persons from the older generations who may be less experienced in device operations. In order for us to truly understand the repercussions of this pandemic on our education and training sector, we must first be able to identify the pre-pandemic format of the sector. So pre-pandemic, primary, secondary, and to an extent tertiary level education and training involved the engaging in physical classes, coming out to school, engaging face-to-face with teachers and peers, laughing with friends, sharing food and stationery, and so much more. Some of these encounters may seem frivolous, but without a doubt add to the schooling experience via helping students, whether it be in building confidence or overcoming social anxiety, or so many other things that is helpful towards. In-class discussion played a huge role in learning experiences. Students were actually asking questions. Something about online classes seems to quiet the inquisitive nature of pupils. I'm sure I'm not the first to be experiencing that deathly silence when a teacher asks a question and that awkward moment when they pause and eventually answer it themselves. Without a doubt, the landscape for education and training in the Caribbean has drastically changed in the face of the pandemic. I find it easier to discuss the experiences of myself as a secondary level student in Trinidad and Tobago. In March 2020, we experienced the temporary close of the physical classroom and the transition into the virtual one. The students of today and the future demand learning arenas that are accommodating of their situations and circumstances. Platforms such as Google Classroom, Google Meet, and Zoom saw a spike in usage as they facilitated the learning process from at home, keeping our students indoors, safe, and still well educated. As compared to the pre-pandemic practice of face-to-face classes, learning was transitioned to the online classroom. The change was no easy feat. School closures have left 7 million learners from over 23 countries and territories in the Caribbean grappling with a new reality of distance learning. And just when it seemed we may have this under control and have figured out this virtual platform, yet another change is upon us, the return of in-person classes. Based on my observations and personal experiences with the ever-changing teaching structure, the response of youth has been generally mixed. Within a single student, their opinions may have fluctuated on the landscape from over its evolution from initiation to date. Drawing reference to my own thought processes during the period, I saw myself having hugely different opinions throughout the transition from physical learning to online learning, and now the slow transition back to physical learning. For many of my colleagues and I, we took physical classes for granted. They had been the MO throughout our entire schooling lives and was seen as a norm that we paid little to no mind to. That was until it was ripped away and haphazardly replaced by distance learning. As many students would, I rejoiced at the thought of not coming to school, not really waking up early. What more could one ask for, right? But before I knew it, I had begun falling back in classes and was really struggling to keep abreast of the content being spewed by my instructors. This is when I learned the value of school, the amount I had subconsciously depended upon a teacher's supervision to keep myself on track. At home, the distractions were innumerable and focus was a thing of the past. One thing I can say is that although it took some time, the pandemic taught me academic independence. And at this point, I feel rather settled into the online format. However, in life's truest form, we experience change just as we get comfortable. The reintroduction of physical school. This aspect of the life cycle has undeniably had a blended response by youth. We are seeing students falling at every spot on the spectrum. There are those who are super enthusiastic to return, the hesitant, the indifferent, and the absolute opposers to the occurrence. But there are benefits to this pandemic and online learning. In addition to the academic independence that I myself gained and many students may have, a lot of other lessons and benefits have emerged as a consequence of this pandemic. A major lesson emerging is that education can appear in a number of forms. It reinforces the need to adapt for both the government and students. Never be too comfortable because in the esteemed words of Heraclitus, there's nothing permanent besides change. Another lesson hammered into families is that a successful educational experience requires more than just the student's efforts. It depends heavily on teacher and parental guidance and support coupled with a number of other factors. Mental health has been showcased to a greater degree in the face of the pandemic, with a number of students reporting poor mental health, depression, etc. Results, the idea has been presented that good teaching is not enough. Schools should make an effort to address the well-being of students and even teachers. The severity of mental health is being spotlighted, and the worsening of mental health challenges for students definitely should be addressed with a betterment in counseling facilities, etc., to support these students. So far, we've definitely covered some of the hardships faced by the education and training sector as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But now we must look toward a strong and beneficial way onward. Hybrid is the best way forward. The hybrid approach of blended learning involves a combination of face-to-face and online classroom instruction activities. It is evident that the training landscape, both virtual and physical, possess positive traits. As such, the strongest education and training landscape is one which mixes the traditional style with the online teaching practices. This will allow for the best of both worlds, so to speak. Many students and teachers have grown adept with different technological aids to be used in classrooms. Let us not waste these skills. Make use of PowerPoint presentations in the physical classroom. Continue to incorporate relevant YouTube videos and lesson plans while at physical school. The online submission system has become more popular and can definitely still continue to facilitate work when students are unable to attend school for various reasons. In the future, the system should better provide for those less advanced students, having teachers trained to work with and work for the students with learning hardships, disabilities, etc. Another issue of importance is the distribution of resources. It will be beneficial for change to occur in the format of the availability of resources, for example, textbook rentals, making it a more reliable system to allow for an indefinite use of materials for all students, especially the less fortunate who are entirely or nearly entirely dependent on these freely available materials. Frequent checks should be done on rented textbooks to avoid defacing, helping schools keep these resources available for students now and to come. Now, how can this pandemic aid us in achieving some of our Sustainable Development Goals? Sustainable Development Goal 4 is the economic goal, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all. Generally speaking, the pandemic has prompted the emergence of online education and training, which can in the long run aid in moving closer to the Sustainable Development Goals. This at-home learning space can allow for students in the Caribbean to access courses pretty much worldwide as long as they have stable internet connection. This opens the door for interactions with highly skilled personnel in the field of interest. On a smaller scale, the benefits still stand to be realized. Individuals who may be discouraged to go to any learning institute within a country due to far traveling distances may be able to totally eliminate this inconvenience. I believe the online platform, which emerged in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, will play a large role in achieving target 4.4, which is increasing the number of people with relevant skills. There's now easier access to training programs at the click of a button. More so, this can play into target 4C, increasing the supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. As current teachers are able to access training workshops and etc., and teachers in training are presented with a number of opportunities to receive training while remaining at home and safe throughout this pandemic period. Education and training are our future. This education, as I speak, is not limited to a college lecture or classroom format. A monumental component of training is in the form of trades and services. Schools such as CCC and MIC serve to develop technical skills, such as woodworking in students. These courses provide a gateway for students whose strong points are more so with physical work. Our societies would fault in the absence of these tradesmen, so the continuation of education and training them is fundamental. Education equips us with the tools to be productive and successful members of society. Education is capable of fostering economic development through a number of avenues. A good education promotes social benefits, individual and the society. Education accelerates productivity and creativity and fuels entrepreneurship. In theory, it is capable of increasing individual income generation in the form of earning money, and in turn it drives economic development. Strides in education will also be able to have an impact on literacy and numeracy rates, which improves statistics in the region in terms of HDI, for instance. Education is also key to promoting peace and social cohesion at national, regional, and even international levels. Education is vital in teaching dialogue, peace, understanding, and respect for human rights. There's no quote I deem more fitting than these words of philosopher Ibn Rushd. Ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to hate, and hate leads to violence. Political stability is closely tied to social cohesion. Proper education allows persons to not be easily persuaded by misinformation. Education also allows for understanding and accepting of policies that may be unrealizable in the present, but capable of benefiting future generations. We don't only want good things for today, we want good things for the future. We want sustainable development, we want better for our future generations as well. So as mentioned earlier, hybrid education is a sensible direction for education today and in the future. In the spring of 2021, Bayview Analytics conducted a survey to determine the opinions of students as regarding their experiences to date with the changes in the dissemination of academic information and their anticipations for the future. In this survey, 68% of students were in favor of a combination of in-person and online courses. Additionally, more than 2/3 of the students divulged that they would like to use more tech and digital course materials in the future. More than half of students said they felt more optimistic about online learning and the use of digital material than they previously did, and felt more optimistic about a combination of in-person and online instruction. There certainly is a way forward through this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage, for really putting into context the challenges with respect to the educational landscape that we currently confront in the region. But with every crisis comes an opportunity, and you were able to highlight some of the opportunities that we have for taking advantage of this crisis and for attempting to move us forward as a Caribbean civilization, especially in a world where we are witnessing so much innovation around education. And you were able to encapsulate these ideas in such a way that it connects to other aspects of a socioeconomic life in the region. And I thank you for such a very detailed and comprehensive presentation. At this time, I wish to welcome Gerald Edwards, who would also be speaking within the context of education and training. You are a senior student at the Presentation College, my alma mater in Grenada. So Mr. Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First, good afternoon, fellow panelists, attentive audience, and general sponsors. My name is Gerald Edwards, and I'll be discussing the topic of culture and orange economy by providing information from regional and international sources on the importance of the issue, especially during the global pandemic, and how we can progress from it. Oxford Dictionary defines culture as the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. Hence, Caribbean culture summarizes the artistic, political, and social elements which represent Caribbean people. The orange economy, also known as the creative economy, is the bringing together of sectors of the economy whose main purpose is the production or reproduction, promotion, dissemination, and or the marketing of goods, services, and activities that are cultural, artistic, or patrimonial content according to UNESCO. The creative industry suffered the brunt of the pandemic as it posed numerous negative effects on arts and culture. Low tourism levels resulted in a decline in revenue and jobs, and with unresponsive public support, this decline will continue alongside innovation levels, welfare, and vibrancy of local communities. Venue-based sectors such as concerts, festivals, cinemas, museums, etc., were hardest hit by social distancing regulations, causing a huge decrease in revenue and increase in layoffs. Yes, we all know there was no Destra concerts this year, or were they? Online content platforms have profited from the increased demand for cultural content streaming. Thus, innovative content creators such as Destra, who took their craft to online platforms, benefited from the pandemic. Ultimately, the pandemic was an eye-opener to the structural fragility of the sector. In order to correct this issue and strengthen the orange economy, we must identify alternatives for the sector both during and after the pandemic. To mention a few, we must create ways to showcase our Caribbean flavor and deliver cultural experiences. Through digitalization, utilizing emerging technologies, we can disseminate cultural services and adopt new business models with market potential. However, to do this, we must address the shortage of skilled labor force in the digital economy and improve digital access. Having information technology taught in secondary schools, such as Presentation College, is a right step to exposing and educating our youth to the technology field for a rapidly digitizing future. Having virtual museum visits, music tours, and digital art galleries are lucrative alternatives to traditional delivery of cultural content. No digital access does not replace a live performance or employ all those who were laid off. You can't feel Juve mud through your computer screen. However, for the orange economy to avoid becoming a stick in the mud, we must explore these alternatives and progress as a region. A trade and financing government framework focused on enterprise and grants market entry programs can make creative entrepreneurs and the work more visible. Speaking of visible, let's talk about what's invisible, the orange economy. Has the creative sector been overlooked? Yes, and in more ways than one. Due to the complexity of forms of employment in the sector, such as freelance, intermittent, or hybrid forms of employment, there is little accessibility of employment and income support measures. These policies should adapt to businesses based on intangible assets. Now, we all know that when times are hard, the first thing to be sacrificed is non-essentials, films, not food. It is evident in our most recent budget as only 273,465,000 has been allocated to the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Arts. The problem are the creative industries have an image problem because they aren't taken seriously by politicians and policymakers, even though they account for 2,250 billion US and 29.5 million jobs globally. Creative industries may be Mickey Mouse subjects in hindsight, but remember, Disney is one of the world's largest corporations. Even the US military consumes the gaming industry's simulation software. The orange economy is one of the most rapidly growing industries in the world economy in terms of income generation, job creation, and export earnings. And it's about time we take a piece of the pie. Or for us Caribbean people, macaroni pie. No? Okay, no. In addition to economic benefits, the orange economy has significant non-monetary value. Culture can be used to raise awareness to problems such as pollution and climate change. It also promotes sustainable cultural urban development, which aligns to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. Creativity and culture empowers us as Caribbean citizens to stimulate innovation, inclusion, and sustainable growth. Culture is the glue that binds our Caribbean states together. It promotes mutual understanding among people, thus everyone, especially our youth, should protect his or her culture as well as others. This can be done by participating in cultural activities and share new ideas in different fields, like art and education. This assists in creating a cultural and peaceful environment. Other initiatives for safeguarding tangible cultural heritage, according to UNESCO, including identifying and documenting heritage, research, preservation, promotion, enhancement, and transmission of it, particularly through formal and non-formal education. A simple example would be teaching children to play steel pan in school. The creative industries allow talented Caribbean people with domestic capital to compete in the global market. They're important for the development of Caribbean societies. Being knowledge and labor intensive, the sector would alleviate the region's unemployment problem by generating economic wealth for individual creativity and talent. The Caribbean region is one of the most exposed to the pandemic due to its dependence on tourism and travel. This triggers the need for a new approach to tourism development. We must shift away from conventional models to creative models of innovative, intangible content using technology. Once linkages are developed, we can engage with creative lifestyles remotely. We must appreciate the fundamental changes stimulated by the growth of the economy and take opportunity by the reins. Currently, our art is dying due to the pandemic. But what is that? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's technology about to save the day. Technology saves art. Digitization of art makes it easier to access, thus allows revenue to be generated. Digital art galleries are created for collectors to connect with the artists and make online purchases. You can say technology is a work of art. This allows temporarily closed galleries the opportunity to present their work on display in digital events, such as virtual museum tours. This is a prime example of opportunity being taken by the reins, as e-commerce is the art sector, as e-commerce in the art sector thrived in the pandemic, unlike many other industries. These cultural sites, such as the Palace of Versailles, the National Gallery in London, and the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, have found innovative solutions to continue activity and compensate for the extended closure. We should learn from example and implement this into our own culture. Imagine showcasing the likes of Harrison Cave, Bonaire National Marine Park, or the Pitons to adventure lovers enjoying from the comfort of their homes. This digital platform can facilitate access to art and culture. Therefore, it acts as a medium to promote your own exhibition, experiment with all types of art, and even educate yourself and deepen your knowledge base. Art digitization coincides with its democratization, which is important considering the limiting state we're in now. Now, no matter where we are, all we need is an internet connection to discover the rich history of art from all over the world. We know where we are, we know where we want to be, and now we know how we can get there. But now we must aim to integrate culture into our economy. We must ensure that the orange economy is no longer overlooked, whether it be land use, economic development strategies, tourism strategies, or community sustainability plans. We must take off our shades, really appreciate the common sun that brings us together, and instead adopt a cultural lens to all government decision-making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards, for your very riveting and detailed presentation on the creative industries. May I remind the panel and those who are listening that the creative industries, according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, contribute significantly to the gross domestic product of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm not only here referencing Carnival, but other aspects of Trinidadian culture that are significant to the economic development of your country. At this time, I wish to welcome Varsha Ramdeo, who will be speaking on industry and innovation. Varsha?
Good afternoon, everyone. My topic for today's discussion is titled Industry and Innovation. So when you think about industry and innovation, what comes to mind? Understanding the dynamics of industrial growth, change, and sustainability at the business sector, national and international levels is what industry and innovation is all about. Throughout this discussion, I will be focusing on 5 questions, which are: what are the implications for the labor market, poverty, unemployment with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic? What is the role of the entrepreneurship in the recovery process or in being forward-thinking as it relates to the COVID-19? What are the expectations or hopes of the youths in securing labor markets for future generations post-COVID? Are social safety nets adequate in mitigating the effects of labor impacts in the COVID-19? And last but not least, what are some lessons that was learned during this period? Firstly, let's begin talking about the implications for labor market, poverty, and unemployment with the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. As we now begin to navigate the economic upturn, it is important to identify not only those who have been hit hardest by the crisis, but also those who are likely to face the longest road in the recovery process. The following are just some of the latest evidence that countries had to face in a time like this. The form of unprecedented impact of the crisis on the labor market was shaped in large by policy. While extensive temporary increased unemployment thus caused unemployment rates to rise elsewhere, publicly subsidizing time reductions absorbed much of the slack. Indeed, there were reduced working time accounted for 3/4 of the decrease in hours working among those who remain employed. Furthermore, many people withdrew from the labor market, increasing the number of those who are unemployed as a fear of infection and increased demands at home, especially for those with small children. They find working was a little bit difficult. Young people had particularly been affected by the ravages of the crisis. At the start of the pandemic, youth unemployment skyrocketed and hours worked by young people plummeted. Many youth have lost their jobs, typically in hard-hit sectors and on dangerous contracts, while those who are about to enter the labor market after finishing school or their degree have struggled to find work in a market with few openings. The first wave of the crisis hit temporary workers disproportionately. While individuals on temporary contracts fared better during the second wave of uncertainty, the impact of the crisis on employees in non-standard employment, whether temporary or self-employed, has significant consequences for income stability and well-being. Because workers on these types of contracts are less adequately protected by the job retention plans and unemployment insurance, it became an issue for them. Those who lost their jobs at the start of the pandemic may be worse off still, and the labor market still remains vulnerable to a rapid buildup of longer-term unemployment. In most countries, the number of unemployed people have increased since the crisis began. Even if many countries' overall economic outlooks have improved, there's a possibility that a divide will grow between those who have continued to work and those who have lost their jobs and income. Simultaneously, a growing divide may emerge between those who have weathered the crisis through reduced hours and brief periods of temporary layoff and those who have found themselves jobless. By the end of 2020, more people had been out of work for at least 6 months than they had been before the crisis, and these figures were still climbing even up until the beginning of 2021. Many emerging and developing countries are still facing high number of COVID-19 cases and difficulties in vaccinating the population. This provides a stark reminder of the potential of the new variants and the need for international cooperation, but also the fact that given those cross-country interactions, there will be no end to this pandemic until a large fraction of the global population has been vaccinated. Secondly, what is the role of the entrepreneurship in the process or in being forward as it relates to the COVID-19? When I thought about this, I was thinking more along the lines of talking about measures such as vaccinating the public, especially the employees. The government as well as private companies are trying their best right now to vaccinate employees or workers so that they can increase business by turning themselves into a vaccination safe zone. If employees or workers happen to get the virus, it would result in several weeks where employees would be mandated to stay at home, therefore decreasing productivity in the work and environment. In this pandemic, we have seen several smaller local businesses open due to an increase of the social media as a form of e-commerce. Being more online or by doing transactions online, it limits the contamination process of goods and services. In turn, it also helps boost the economy. The next point I have is training for retrenched workers. For example, CPAP workers or other members of society who are deemed unemployed or underqualified are now able to gain some sort of qualification or experience, so they have a way to secure a proper job. Thirdly, I have what are the expectations or hopes of youth in securing labor markets for future generation post-COVID. So the national youth strategies and plans can assess policies across ministries and sectors, and most nations had youth-specific strategies in place prior to the COVID-19 crisis, though their range may aim and differ. Some nations that responded have a national youth plan in place that covers various sectors, and they are in the process of developing a new or updated strategy. For example, in December 2020, the Korean government published a youth policy basic plan with policy guidelines for each ministry to promote a response to support the young people through the COVID pandemic. While there's no national youth strategy in other countries, or they are now becoming one, the government in each country developed a youth employment strategy for COVID-19 recovery that offers tailored solutions through the packages of measures, including hiring subsidies for the youth under the age of 26, apprenticeship contracts, strengthened employment support, and training targets at a disadvantage because of the people at the young age. In the aftermath of 2008 global financial crisis, trust in the public institution declined, and many countries, especially a lot of youth, was at risk. Next, are the social safety nets adequate in mitigating the effects of labor impacts in the COVID-19? When you think about safety nets, you immediately think about fallback plans or something we could rely on when everything gets out of hand. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have various safety nets that the government implemented. So I'm just going to list some. We have the food cards. In Trinidad and Tobago, the government had begun distributing more food cards to citizens as food prices began to rise and citizens were either jobless or simply not working during the pandemic. It is also to assist low-income households in acquiring basic necessities. We also had disability grants through social welfare. We had salary relief grants. We had increase in the money in the social welfare. We had deferrals from banks with respect to loans. So I know, for example, Republic Bank was allowing their customers to defer loans, if I'm not mistaken, for 6 months during the first part of the lockdown. We also had some implementation of suicide hotlines. We had online therapy, counseling for those that were really affected by staying home so much, by being locked up. We had the extended residency time period for immigrants. Next, and what are some lessons learned during this period? Lessons in terms of what I looked at it as the remote working, such as being able to access all data or documents from home. So companies had an advantage here where now they had to implement these systems where put programs in place where I could be at home and I could be able to access all the data that I would need. We had teaching done from online or remote locations. For each of these points, there are both the advantages and disadvantages. For the manufacturing industry, we had the less contamination of goods and services. We had high quality products, especially high quality products like food and nutrition. we had less risk of infection. There were also high cost of goods and services due to the limited supplies at disadvantage. Another disadvantage that came out of this was with output, it was never really 100%. We were either working 50-50, and at some point, workers, the labor force was becoming overworked, burnt out, because what you would usually use on 100%, you're now minimizing to 50, and they were feeling it a lot. So, but it also forces more individuals to actually be qualified in information technology, because now everything is done via online. So that was an advantage. I'd like to conclude by saying the full impact of the crisis on the labor market is not yet behind us. The final magnitude of unemployment loss is likely to be determined not just by the duration of the restriction, but also by the expectations and long-term shifts in technology. Firms are restructuring in ways that are speeding the pre-existing trends, including automation, digitalization, and increased need for specialists in the healthcare and green industries, according to some preliminary findings. The government should prioritize upskilling and retraining those people who are stuck hardest by the pandemic and are projected to have the most difficulty returning to stable, high-quality jobs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very enlightening introduction. I think one of the things that you raised, which we really have to think about, is what is the post-COVID labor economy going to look like? As you said, acceleration with respect to automation and artificial intelligence and things like that. What does that look like for people in the informal sector who may not have access to the kind of technologies that they would be able to, that would enable them to embrace the new economy, if you will? So we certainly want to pick up on that in the question and answer segment. But at this time, I want to welcome Mr. Lorenzo Sahadeo to give us some opening remarks.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Sahadeo. I'm a student in business management at UE Roy Tech, and today I will be discussing the topic of food security and agriculture. So according to the USAID, which is a very well-known development agency supported by the US government, food security can be described as having an easy physical and economic access to food to meet dietary needs for a productive and healthy life. So based on their research that they conducted in several countries, they have proven that investment in the agricultural sector has more than twice the effect as compared to other investment in other sectors. So this can lead to reducing the poverty in the country, as well as providing a means to deal with the food security concerns of a country. So it is no secret that the world population is increasing. It will continue to increase. Also, what goes hand in hand with that, our food production needs to keep up. Agriculture can be used to help countries feed their own people and reduce any food security concerns that they may have. Regionally here in the Caribbean, we know there's a stigma with agriculture. All the young people coming up, the new generation, they think in their mind that agriculture is very laborious and it has very little or no rewards. But I mean, in other places around the world where they don't have that mindset and that stigma behind agriculture, we see that they are using agriculture to their benefit and they are using it to develop their economies, create jobs, and move forward in terms of building the economy and making it stronger. And we need to look at what other countries around the world, what they are doing, and adopt it to make our Caribbean region similar, right? We can learn from others. The mindset of our population definitely needs to change, and we need to see the agricultural sector as being a vital part of our country's future. Our food importation bill is very alarming. It's increasing year on year for many Caribbean countries. If you look at the statistics and you look at the food importation bill, every year it keeps getting higher and higher. And we need to do something to address that. For example, in the Trinidad budget statement for 2022, when the finance minister reviewed the food importation bill for 2020, it sat at $4 billion. And when you look at the track record, it keeps getting higher and higher every year. So everyone sees these numbers, and the information and the data, the facts are right in front of you. We do have a problem. And when the finance minister reviewed the GDP, the contribution of agriculture towards our GDP, it has been less than 1% over the last 10 years. So that is telling us that we are having no growth in the agricultural sector. For it to contribute less than 1% over a 10-year period consistently. So we do have a problem. And what we need to do, we always have ideas and action plans, but we need to take these ideas and action plans out of the paper and actually execute them, right? And we need to execute these ideas and action plans so that we can use our agricultural sector to help lead to a self-sustainable country where we can feed our own people and produce our own food. After performing some research, I looked at case studies in Ethiopia, case studies in Singapore, where these countries had high cases of poverty and very high levels of food importation. In Ethiopia, for example, they were able to do in less than 5 years, they opened a lot of agricultural training centers. They trained more than 60,000 persons on how to use modern techniques in agriculture and train them the right way, how to engage in the agricultural sector and invest in it. They improved the roads, road access to all these farming areas. These farming areas were affected by poor supply of water and electricity. They addressed all these issues and they gave everyone the right environment, the right resources that they needed to succeed if they chose to invest in agriculture. And this is paying off today. We have poverty levels in Ethiopia dropped by 27%, which is very high for a big country and population like that. Singapore, they use training and technology to teach people because if you look at Singapore, Singapore is very densely populated in certain areas. Getting land is a big problem for agriculture. So they identified that they have buildings abandoned, not serving a purpose. And what they did, they trained people how to use modern forms of agriculture to boost the food production of the country. They made multi-story buildings, and you have indoor agriculture happening. So with hydroponics, and their aim, and they are already seeing results from all of this that they implemented, is to provide at least 30% of their food requirement from within their own country. And it's a big improvement for them because they were going from, they are now moving from 90% of importing food down to about 70 or 60% of their food importation volume. So that's some good case history that we can see and we can get readily available online and learn from these countries. So in my research, I do see the need for some implementation of short-term measures that need implementing right now, and then long-term measures that we can implement over time, and that will help us deal with our food security concerns. So some of my recommendations are we need to accept that we do have some people that cannot afford a proper meal and they do go to bed hungry. So to deal with that aspect of it, we need to have efficient and transparent programs where we give aid and help to the families and the people who need it, so they can at least afford proper meals every day, right? This is in the short term. We need to do something like this to cater for this side of the population. Also, in the marketing of the agricultural sector, we need to do something to break that stigma in everyone's minds that agriculture is too much of hard work and there is no reward. We need to promote it as being a productive and profitable sector. And we need more than ever to promote the long-term positive effects that agriculture has, because once we start to produce more food locally and we start to use more of our local food, we'll have a healthier population. And a healthier population means later down the road, we spend less money in healthcare. This money that we save on healthcare, whether it be 1 billion per year because we have a healthier population, we can now take this money and allocate it in different areas to boost other areas that need development, and they need the funds to continue progressing and for growth. So we need to really remodel the way how we market agriculture. We need to change the mindset of our people. We need to encourage the current generation to invest in agriculture. We need entrepreneurs in agriculture to create innovative ideas. We need the business community to develop companies that promotes the growth in agriculture. And also with these development of new companies, we will create job opportunities, which will greatly help our economy. And it will reduce the unemployment rate as well. So we also need to accept the fact that the people in agriculture right now, they do have challenges. Some of them will be able to do their own research and overcome their challenges. But we need to accept that some of them do need help. So the people in agriculture, we need to provide ways and means of them reaching out to a group that is most likely set up by the government to help them overcome their challenges, because we don't want people to get so frustrated when they hit a roadblock that they decide to leave agriculture altogether. So we need to provide a form of providing technical support to people who are already in farming. So they can come to this organization and say, I have this problem, I need some help, how do I solve it? So I think setting up a small division like that will be of great help to the existing farmers. Also, we want to make training and education in agriculture very easily available and accessible in communities, and also especially in well-known farming communities, which are most usually rural communities. So once this training and education is easily accessible and available, we will start making it part of the norm that it's okay to go into the agricultural sector. There is a future in the agricultural sector, okay? And we need to teach our existing farmers and people who are considering going into agriculture the new and modern techniques that are available to them. So it can open their eyes and they can see opportunities where they can save money, probably do things more efficient, and they can be more profitable. And the thing is, there is an abundance of information, abundance of technology being used right now to improve farming worldwide. But if our people are not exposed to it and they don't know about it, then it's of no value. So we need to find creative ways, innovative ways of exposing our people to this technology in agriculture that will help them. Also, we need to cement agreements with farmers in terms of distribution channels. And I think the government can play an important part in this. So our local farmers who are producing products locally, if the government can help them out by taking most of their produce and using it in state-funded programs and institutions, will be good. At least they don't have to worry, okay, I have all of my crops on hand, or I have all of my animals on hand, what next? Who do I sell it to? So if the government puts policies in place that, okay, for a school feeding program, we are only going to go to local suppliers, or 60% of it has to be locally produced. And the same for the hospitals. The hospital, they provide meals for patients, right? So at least, let's say 60%, 70% of it has to be locally produced. And that way we'll provide a readily available market for the farmers to sell their product. Also, if governments can get together with restaurants, food service providers, and they can maybe come to an agreement where, okay, on their menu, they are going to include at least 30% or 40% of it. They are going to make it with locally produced items. So this will even widen the distribution channel for farmers again, and it will be more attractive for new people or new investors who are looking to get into the agricultural sector. Also, governments can start working together from different countries and create that links, those links and those channels for export opportunities. And this might be more attractive to the big business owners to get into agriculture when they see that there are opportunities to export produce from our country abroad. And in summary, most of the above steps and recommendations that I listed, I think it will encourage persons to invest in the concept of being able to provide their own food, and it will also help with our food security concerns, which are right in front of us, right? Our food importation bill is too high right now in Trinidad, and we really need to do something to reduce that. And also it will apply for the other Caribbean regions as well. The right, so this is very dangerous. This rising food import bill, for me, it's very alarming, and we are depending on other people. Scarcity will exist, and where there's scarcity, prices will increase. And once those prices increase, it might reach to a point where a lot of people would not be able to afford to buy food, right? And they will have to live in hunger. Now we need to address that now. And I think the only way we can do it, we do have a lot of good ideas. We do have a lot of good action plans. We need to take it out of the paper and put it in action, right? And use those ideas, put those action plans into motion so we can improve our food security situation in the future and for our up and coming generation.
Okay, Lorenzo, thank you there for giving us some very important context. I thought while you were speaking about food insecurity in the region, I think a number of things are happening now that I think we have to think about. One is we are currently in the throes of a global shipping crisis that is affecting the global supply chain. That has resulted in increase in prices of just moving freight across the globe. And inadvertently, the cost of those increases are passed on to the consumer. Of course, because we are such high net importers of food, what does that look like with respect to basic commodity items on the supermarket shelves? In Grenada, for example, there's been significant increases in food prices over the last year. But another element of this that we have to think about, according to the World Food Program in July 2020, there was an estimate that 2.9 million people in the Caribbean region were food insecure across the English-speaking Caribbean in particular. Around 400,000 of those people were severely food insecure. As the widespread socioeconomic impacts of the pandemic significantly alter livelihoods, increased job loss, and reduced income have impacted nutrition, eating habits, and of course, food security. So you guys have your work cut out for you. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome Gershom Byng for some opening comments. And then we will get to some questions.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bubb. Good afternoon, attentive listeners, and to my fellow panelists. This afternoon, I've been given the opportunity to present on the topic, Accelerating Caribbean Development, a Youth-centric Development Approach, Entrepreneurship and Business. Historically, Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean region, within a broad economic sense, have been the producers and exporters of primary goods. The state has also been a major player in regional economies, a quintessentially post-colonial characteristic which continues to be a reality within the global south, otherwise known as the developing world. Trinidad and Tobago government, for example, is the largest single employer, hiring a third of the workforce, which has been a strain on them for quite some time. And the economic studies have shown that labor productivity is lower in the public sector than in the private sector. This would undermine economic growth, seeing that a large percentage of the workforce is being employed inefficiently. This has also negative implications for economic growth within the region. Entrepreneurship in the Caribbean region has mainly been characterized by small traders. Many of these traders were immigrants. Domestic entrepreneurship has been stemmed in the post-colonial era by the absence of a business-friendly environment which facilitates and develops private sector growth. With that being said, in order for the Caribbean region to accelerate development with a youth-centric approach, entrepreneurship should be encouraged and cultivated to play a more important role in the growth and the development in the Caribbean economy. The majority of the Caribbean economies depend on agriculture, tourism, and the export of petroleum and petrochemicals. Since 2015, Trinidad and Tobago economic strength has significantly contracted, mainly because of the reduction in oil and gas prices globally and due to the production and prices falling. Another major income earner in the Caribbean would be the tourism industry, which has been negatively impacted over the course of approximately 2 years because of the unforeseen pandemic and the impact of continuous and regular lockdowns. However, ladies and gentlemen, sun, sand, sea tourism has not been the salvation of Caribbean economies. Evidence of this would be Jamaica having a record number of tourist arrivals of 4.3 million in 2017. The economy only grew approximately 1%. And the same for other tourist attraction territories, for example, Barbados, St. Lucia, Bahamas. Within the last 10 years, the economies have only grown between 1% and 2%. The government can help facilitate growth within the private sector, particularly in the area of exportation, not only of primary goods, but also secondary and tertiary goods, as well as by encouraging young persons to become more involved in business. We believe it would definitely lighten the load and assist government in the development of the region's economy. In Trinidad and Tobago, for example, a new ministry has been created called the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. This can possibly go a long way to encouraging persons to open and operate businesses with government assistance in the realm of tech integration and support. Furthermore, the increased use of technology would assist in making business activity and transaction much more convenient and less time-consuming. The Customs and Excise Division has extensive room for operating at an increased level in terms of the use of technology for further optimization and efficiency. Notably, the Customs and Excise Division function as the gatekeepers of import and export. A fluid optimum working division would go a long way in facilitating a more efficient business environment. For too long, small and medium-sized businesses have been struggling with the tediously slow and archaic operations of that division. Other points facilitating more efficient business environment, we look at mobilization of capital for establishing businesses in the private sector to promote business creation should be considered. The governments of the region should also consider incentives such as tax cuts for those who take up this task in investing in these new small and medium-sized businesses. Angel investing, which is a proven and striving method of investing, particularly in economically striving countries, should also be promoted as a viable option in the Caribbean. This is where persons of other institutions with the capacity should make accessible financial support for up-and-coming businesses. Additionally, some forms of mentorship should be promoted between striving companies to new and developing ones. Ladies and gentlemen, a micro stock exchange, yes, you heard me correctly, a micro stock exchange should be also considered. As is known, Trinidad and Tobago stock exchange is generally slow in comparison to the larger and more active ones in major economies globally. With the involvement of smaller companies and the creation of incentives for businesses to invest in these companies, inroads could be made with regard to mobilizing capital. Financial institutions, let's not forget that, must also help in the process. Financial institutions should consider working with governments to further facilitate a healthy environment by making financial assistance easier to receive. Incentives such as tax rates could also be given to these institutions, as noted earlier. VAT refunds being paid regularly and on time would also help encourage both large and small businesses to engage in ensuring that they are in line with government regulations. Furthermore, this would ensure that these businesses have more funds on hand and readily available to conduct transactions on a moment's notice. Economy, ladies and gentlemen, to sum it up very simply, is the movement of money. It is by its very nature transactionary. Any economy with consistent, diverse, and productive activity would strive. With the increased necessary attention being placed on entrepreneurship, much needed activity in the economy would be stimulated. Take, for example, the first world economic giants, United States of America. When the COVID-19 virus decimated economies around the world, with most economies being stagnant, the US government decided to pump substantial financial resources into their economy, not only to stabilize their economy, but to fuel activity. To simply put it, the more persons doing business and earning money is a plus for government, for the people, and for society. Particularly given that the government earns from taxation, pay, etc., and this in the ideal case is reinvested into the economy. However, our systems of collection these taxes among entrepreneurs and SMEs must be more efficient, ladies and gentlemen, in order to stem the leakages which currently exist. These initiatives, together with the youth being introduced to fundamentals of business and entrepreneurship theoretically and practically, would definitely help propel the development of the Caribbean regions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much there for that very stirring contribution. And what we want to do now is that we want to engage in a Q&A. Again, as I said, as the format of this panel discussion is a bit armchair. So we want to ensure that we are having as much engagement as possible. And so I want to begin with both Sage and Gerald. And earlier, you guys spoke about the challenges that we currently confront in the education sector. And my first question would be, how has the education and training landscape changed since the onset of the COVID pandemic? And given that we're still in the throes of the pandemic, again, what we want to do is to look at ways of innovating education. What do you think we can learn from these changes? Sage or Gerald, whoever wants to go first.
Okay, so as I had probably mentioned earlier, there was a lot of transitions with the educational sector in the face of this pandemic. You know, we went from those physical classes to strictly distance learning, and at this point now in certain arenas, we are seeing the return of physical classes, maybe not in the original form, but in a similar form, right? Now, what I personally believe is that the way forward is hybrid education, where although we may be going back out to school, we are taking these lessons that we learned through distance learning, such as people who might have become really pro at multimedia or better at research, you know, all these things that were pushed on us in distance learning, we are still going to use these developments in the future despite in-person learning. So a combination of the past method, the present method to make the best version of the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on that.
Okay, and let us hear from you, Gerald. What are your thoughts on that? The same question about the landscape, and have we learned anything from this period? I don't think Gerald, there you are. If you just unmute your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, based on the point of socialization being a vehicle for sustainable development in the Caribbean, I see socialization as the lifelong process of inheriting and disseminating norms, customs, and ideologies, providing an individual with the skills and habits necessary for participating within his or her own society. Now, socialization can be broken down into two types, primary and secondary, but I'll be mainly focusing on the primary. Primary socialization occurs when a child learns the attitudes, values, and actions appropriate to individuals as members of a particular culture. Therefore, in order to integrate our Caribbean culture, our Caribbean flavor into the socialization process, we must teach Caribbean culture to our youth, whether it be through literature such as A Brighter Sun by Sam Selvon, or theater, for example, Tejon and his brothers. We must involve our children in Kids Carnival, let them watch the Soca Monarch, or simply converse with them about our culture daily. I personally enjoy my family sharing Caribbean folklore about Sukunya, Buck, Dwens, Papa Boy, etc. But Caribbean youth today is becoming more and more westernized due to globalization. I can guarantee you that there are Trini parents with Trini kids who have British accents just from watching the likes of Peppa Pig and Ben and Hood. So we have to encourage our children to read books like Anansi and such, and really involve them in our culture, because our culture is one of our biggest assets. It's unique, it's our own. And we are able to tap into the knowledge base, our human resources, to be able to evolve from the old-fashioned outlook of our economy. So I think it's best that we try to, again, encourage the transmission of our culture to the youth, so we can continue to promote sustainable development in our economy.
Okay, and Gerald, I think we have two questions here from the audience, which I believe you answered. And the question was, how can culture be integrated into our socialization process and be seen as a viable route for Caribbean development? And how then do you attach that to notions of development? How do we view culture as a tool of development? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's pretty simple, because culture is an intangible asset. And even though it may be overlooked, it has numerous sectors within it, such as tourism, music, theater, that are highly lucrative if we could tap into it. Even though we're in the pandemic, and even though we won't be able to go to the physical theaters and such, there are many different alternatives that are allowed to be happening due to the advent of technology, so that we could push our economy forward. As you can see in recent budgets, we are moving towards more digitalization of the economy. So I'm sure we can move towards, I should say, digitizing our culture. We'll basically try to change the way we provide our culture, how we expose our culture, how we deliver those cultural experiences to the world. And in return, we bring back foreign revenue. So that would assist in our sustainable development.
Very well. And Sage, I have a follow-up question here from an audience member. They're saying that you spoke about social cohesion, which is a powerful concept. Yes, and the question here is, how can the notion of social cohesion help, given the challenges that we currently face with education and training? Fundamentally, in this period, you're not necessarily socializing in the way that you normally would, or you normally had before the onset of the pandemic. So the ball is in your court. How does social cohesion make sense in this period?
Okay, yes, due to social distancing regulations, we may not be able to talk in the face-to-face sense, and socialization is becoming quite difficult. I mean, I see it for myself. In the past 2 years, I'm sure the 4 months and 2s in my school don't know each other. And it's understandable, but we need to understand the importance of socialization. We need to understand that even though there are monetary values, there's also the non-monetary values. We are able to bring a tighter community. We are able to raise awareness. We're able to combat the complex challenges such as pollution and climate change and bullying, and we are able to do this together. Instead of allowing this distance to keep us apart, we should try to, just hold our hand tighter. try to keep hope in the whole sense of camaraderie and just being a true citizen. Never forget the people that, you know, they're on the same sun, we share the same Caribbean Sea. So we will try our best to be unionized and continue to fight the good fight.
Sage?
Yeah, so this social cohesion that we speak of is really regarding like how the togetherness and the agreement of our society. And we see the importance of social cohesion, I feel like, in the challenges in the education and training sector. A really prevalent example right now is that in spite of the challenges with the distance learning, we have in Trinidad, I can definitely say, we have attempted the return to school with the stipulation that our pupils must be vaccinated. Now, in the face of social cohesion, where everybody is on the same page per se, you know, everybody's probably vaccinated and everybody's back to school. But in the absence of this, you know, we definitely have back and forth, we have unrest. We see that, you know, certain students are losing out because they are unable to participate in these face-to-face classes. So I just believe that the challenges in this sector really reinstate the importance of social cohesion to us as a society, and how important it is to work towards it, even though it's not an overnight process. It could take years or decades or however long. It is important to continue working towards social cohesion to get challenges like this sorted and moving like as one without as much separation and unrest within the persons in society.
One of the recurring themes that came up in your opening statements was that of the role of the entrepreneurial spirit in causing our economies to rebound. And Varsha, I would go to you next. What do you think the role is of that entrepreneurial spirit in the recovery process for Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean? You know, especially a lot of small business entrepreneurs, they complain that they don't necessarily have access to startup financing. They may have great ideas, but they may not necessarily have the capacity to get these ideas off the ground. So when we're speaking about that entrepreneurship, what do you think that looks like post-COVID? And how can we really implement a lot of these ideas that you spoke about?
So the entrepreneurship industry, let's talk about those people. To have this startup finance, it's going to always be hard for them no matter what. Before COVID, after COVID, it's going to be the same thing, right? But just post-COVID, it's going to be a little more difficult for them because now they're thinking about ways, they're thinking about these innovative ideas to come up with. So I noticed in one of my points I discussed, I talked about a lot of local businesses opening up. Mm-hmm. I've noticed just where I'm located right now, where I live, we have a lot of online clothing stores popping up right around. People are doing their own little things that I guess boost an economy in my point of view. Mm-hmm. I just need to hear your question one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, what role, okay, let me rephrase it this way. How important would entrepreneurship be as a pillar of economic recovery moving out of this pandemic period?
Well, I personally would like to say that it would play an important role. It helped boost the economy. We import a lot of stuff. Trinidad and Tobago importation bill is very high. Mm-hmm. We cannot deny that. Yeah. So when I think about it, I think about if we have all these things, we can boost our economy in a way. We help our economy. We help. I'm trying to find the terminology for it, to get the country going again. We are the startup points. We have to start. We just have to start. Once we start, and the government would eventually see, well, I would hope so, the government would eventually see that we are making some kind of sacrifice. We are trying our best, and they would put out effort along the way by giving these entrepreneurs grants or like a tax reduction on certain stuff, they would help them. So we're not focusing on bringing down all these clothes or shoes or all these stuff. We could get it right here. Both the manufacturing sector kind of a little bit iffy there. I would think about it like that, but that's my opinion on it.
And then we have another question from the audience, from one of the attendees in today's session, and they're saying, do you think social safety nets devised have adequately addressed the informal sector? And if not, what can be done about that?
So the informal sector is people basically in those in society that simply do not declare income, they pay no tax on them. So when I think about the informal sector, like right now at the top of my head, I think about domestic workers, street vendors, home-based vendors. So do I think safety nets devised, these safety nets have adequately addressed them? No. And I would like to place a little bit of focus on the food cards, for example.
Yeah.
To help the food cards, no matter what, it is always going to end up in corruption. That's how it is. In order to fix this, in order to change this, I think that we need to develop a criteria, like a selection plan. Who are we giving these food cards to? Who are we targeting these food cards? Like, are we just going to just hand out food cards because we're in a pandemic? Or are we going to say that, okay, your household income is lower than this amount? Let's focus on you. You need to live, you need to survive. We need to give you the basic necessities. Let's focus on you. And I think that's one way we can look forward to it, a good criteria system. That's one way to actually try to fix it, try to help the informal sector basically.
As opposed to creating this blanket approach that says everyone gets some kind of handout, right? It has to be means tested is what you're trying to say.
It would be a little more difficult though, because it will take a lot more time. You actually have to go and sit down and go through all the people in the household. We have to figure out like where they work, how much people there, and like what if people need more? What if we have the elderly, they need more medication, they need certain types of food. It's going to be a lot, but I think it's doable. It could be doable.
Lorenzo, while you were speaking, there was a volley of questions that came your way around the conversation on agriculture and food security, because I think in the Caribbean, this is a perennial conversation that continues to happen, and it views agriculture as a problem when it should not be a problem. Agriculture is, to me, the solution to a lot of our problems because it secures our food supply. It secures our supply chain, especially in these vulnerable times. So I would get quickly to some of the questions that even I had, that some of the audience members were asking. And the first one is, what would you consider in your presentation? You spoke about marketing strategy, okay? What would you define or consider a good marketing strategy for agriculture?
Okay, so to promote or encourage people to get into agriculture, there has to be something in it for them, right? So just like how you would see as you go by along the street, you'll see a lot of advertisement on certain things, right? The government needs to realize that this is a dormant sector. They need to get it out there. So you need to put it in people's faces, right? So start putting up a few advertisements. But getting back to my first point, there needs to be something in it for people to go to invest in it, to spend time in it, to spend money in it. So the government needs to take some risk and put some money and say, okay, I need suppliers to provide food for the school feeding program, right? I need X amount of this, and I need suppliers. Also in the hospitals, I need suppliers to supply this. But what they need to supply, it's locally grown, right? So you need to create a market for people to make money, to attract people to invest, to attract people to spend their time into it, for people to choose this as an education path for their children, right? Because growing up in Trinidad, your parents always try to push you into engineering or into business because they came from farming and they don't want that for their children, right? They want their children to make more money. But I mean, little do they realize agriculture does have a lot of money, right? Once you know how to do it right. And if we can market it in such a way, well, okay, there's something to be gained from agriculture, I think that will be a huge motivating factor for people to want to get into it. But if you're not advertising that, okay, there's a market for locally produced vegetables and livestock, then how much people will invest in it, right? Because they're not seeing that dollar value, they're not seeing that money in front of them.
Mm-hmm. How about the idea, and you talk about marketing, I'm in communications and sloganeering, that's what I do. Agribusiness, right? I think that would be a novel way of reframing agriculture, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I attended Presentation College in Grenada, it was agricultural sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it not paired with agricultural science and principles of business to make it
right.
agribusiness? I think that would be a good approach to really reimagining how we think about agriculture and really engendering a cultural shift. But there is another question that is asking, how can agriculture at the fundamentally basic level be better integrated into our education system?
Right. So when I was going to secondary school, we actually had the subject agri-sciences.
Yeah.
Right. So you do agri-sciences from Form 1 to Form 3, but then that's the furthest you can go, right? It stops at Form 3, right? So then people who maybe really liked it for the first 3 years in secondary school and they wanted to continue with it, there was no avenue for them to continue with it, at least where I went to school, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can detail an education program where you can take agri-sciences from Form 1, right, all the way through to university, for the people that are really interested and like it and want to do it, will be good. I can speak from my own experience. I didn't see that education program from start to finish. It started, but then it stopped, right? No one can move forward after Form 3 in agriculture. Right? That was it. It was just an introduction to agriculture. But when you introduce something and you stimulate the mind of the young persons in the schooling system and they want to move forward, you have to give them the opportunity to move forward with it and not just say, well, okay, that's the end of it there. You need to choose sciences or you choose business. That was the two options. Those were the options available to me in my secondary school, and I assume it was like that for other schools as well.
Yeah, I think it's the general principle across the Caribbean. It was the same in when I attended high school. At Form 3, it stopped. I don't even think agricultural science was a CXC subject for me at the time. It was defined as CXC at the time. But there's another question here that says, you mentioned that the Caribbean needs to take action as opposed to have them written on paper. What are some ways do you think the Caribbean can change this given its resources? And you spoke about implementation. One of the things in your presentation that you mentioned is we have to move from these policy prescriptions, these academic prescriptions that are written on paper to implementation. How do you imagine that implementation happening?
Okay, so as I mentioned, for the past 10 years, it has been consistent, right? In terms of growth in the agricultural sector, which is, you don't see any growth, right? It's always below 1%. So, and if you look back every year, you'll see monies allocated to the agricultural sector to help build it to grow. So, okay, every year in the budget, you're getting money assigned to agriculture. Same thing in this year's budget. They got $1 billion to invest in agriculture, to stimulate the economy, to help agricultural sector grow. But it starts with leadership. The people in charge of this allocation, putting it to good use and actually using it, right? So, okay, you get this funding, $1 billion in agriculture, right? Let's say you get that every year. But what do you do with that allocation that you got, right? Is it mismanaged? Do you not do anything at all? and we need the leaders who are in control of this allocation to actually take agriculture seriously and do what they had in their manifesto, do what they said they were going to do in the budget. And I mean, if the money runs out, fine, but at least you made some progress in doing what you said you were going to do. And I think the perception is that every year you get this allocation for agriculture and they don't do anything, right? Well, they don't make progress at all. You don't see, there's no visibility on what was done with that allocation.
Right, and that's important, right? What happens there with the people's money, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I think that is a very, very, very important point, because I think it's not only Trinidad and Tobago, it's throughout the region. It's the same thing in Grenada. It's the same thing in St. Vincent, although St. Vincent is considered the breadbasket of the OECS region. They still have those challenges as well.
Right.
Now, another question here that someone is asking is about breaking the stigma among young people. And I think you touched on it, but how do you really break that stigma of agriculture, even among parents who, as you said, would prefer to have their children go into law and engineering as opposed to going into agribusiness? I would call it agribusiness moving forward.
Right. So like in my parents' generation, being involved in agriculture was the norm, right? And then you had a transition where the older generation started to mold the younger generation and thinking that agriculture is something bad to get into. You need to do A and you need to do B. Forget about agriculture. Right? So breaking stigma does not happen overnight. It happens over a long period of time. And if from now our generation start to mold the minds of the up and coming generation, which are our children, and tell them, okay, I mean, you like agriculture, go follow through with it. It's a profitable sector. It's a vital sector for the economy and for the country. There's good in agriculture, and we need to start molding the minds of our young children right now to let them know agriculture is nothing bad. It's something good. It's a good area. It's a good sector to get into, besides law and engineering and being a doctor, right? And that is how we're going to break that stigma. It starts with us on this panel here. We need to mold the minds of the people that will be our future.
And in some cases, you can do both as well. You can be an agriculturist and you can still be a lawyer, right?
Correct.
It doesn't mean that you have to go into one particular career path. I think in this period, we have to be nimble. We have to be able to find different ways of innovating and different ways of utilizing the talents and skills that we have. But Gershom, I would get to you. There is a question here from the audience that's asking, what is your opinion on the German economic model? And is it able to be applied to small island developing states? You need to unmute the mic, your microphone there.
You hear me now?
Yes, please.
All right, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good afternoon again. So firstly, to answer the question, we have to keep in mind that the Caribbean territories are very young. We are now independent approximately 40 to 50 years on average compared to these giant superpowers. Yeah, but I do agree, some things we could take from the German economic model, but I would not take one model and say, okay, let's just use that. No, it's a diverse, and if you take from different parts to what worked for you in your region. So for instance, German economic model, more target innovative industry, vocational training, closer relationship between financial and industrial sectors, which I highlighted in my presentation earlier. Financial institutions must work closely with the business industry. And that will lead me to my next point. For instance, when you go to financial institutions, at least in Trinidad, it's very difficult for young persons to get funding. Yeah. And not only that, the information put out there, some young persons don't even know. So government need to up their promotion. I I listened to you carefully. That is your field slogan and communication. Government needs to up their promotion and put out information for young entrepreneurs, young businessmen and women to know what to do and what to follow. And the financial institution must stay consistent with that. It must not vary. It must not get different over a period of time. Also, we need to focus on our culture. Our culture, I'll give you a short story. I remember in Form 3, a teacher asked me what I want to be when I grow up. And I told her I want to be an entrepreneur. She said, that's good, you know, but what you really want to do. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thinking that has us where we are today. Get a government job, and that is a real job, where entrepreneurship over the worldwide and in developed countries is a big thing. So I would say we could take different aspects from the German model, even other models as well, but we need to make it applicable to where we are in the Caribbean today.
I think there is a respectability politics-driven orthodoxy with career paths in the Caribbean. I remember when I graduated high school, the trajectory was, well, are you going to go to UWI to study law? I never wanted to go study law. I wanted to go into small business entrepreneurship and marketing. Now, my parents were not entirely happy with that trajectory because they expected me to go to UWI to study law, come back to Grenada, practice criminal law. That was not my path. I was not interested in going to law school at all. And that does not make me dunce at all. But there's another question here. What strategic initiatives do you think would help the Caribbean deal effectively with the impact of the future of work? And I believe that the panelists here is really, when they're speaking of the future of work, they're thinking about things like artificial intelligence.
Well, what we could do, as I alluded to in my points earlier, the ministry that is now founded in Trinidad and Tobago concerning digitalization, that will now ease the combustion among persons looking to get information, also to do business, just payment, the way we do payments, the way we get information. These things will definitely help. Secondly, again, I would say we need to promote, right? For instance, how many entrepreneurs know that social platforms are monetized today? And how do they know how to go about monetizing their social platforms? These things are a big income earner across the world, and majority of the leading billionaire entrepreneurs in developed countries, this is where their fundamental foundation is. So government needs to take the responsibility, at least half of the responsibility, because as an entrepreneur, you need to do your own research. You can't expect to be an entrepreneur and want the government or private sector to do everything for you. But they need to take some level of responsibility in disseminating information on these platforms and keeping in trend with developed countries and developed trends moving forward.
Now, you speak there about this thrust for digital transformation, and I can't help but, and this is a general question, and I wish the other panelists would engage on this idea, especially Sage and Varsha. There is the challenge of the digital divide in the region. We cannot assume that everyone who has access to the technology knows how to use the technology. But that is one aspect of it, having access to technology, but knowing how to use the technology. But the second aspect of it is, what about internet speeds and access to broadband internet? That particular challenge also exists. And then we also have the challenge with respect to the digital divide. That digital divide is viewed across generations, yes? So your parents may not necessarily have access to the internet to be able to access basic services in an environment where we are witnessing these changes in digitization. So for example, my grandmother in Grenada, she is used to going to the utility company and standing in line and paying her bill with cash. But now they've moved to much more of an online way of bill payment. Now she does not know how to use the technology. She does not have access to the internet or might not be necessarily computer literate. How do we ensure that while we are, as a Caribbean civilization, we are much younger, and so that you have much more citizens who have access to the technology. How then do we bring those along who do not have access to the technology? So anyone can take this, and I encourage everyone on the panel to jump in on this one.
I will just chime in quickly concerning access and availability of the internet and the know-how to use it. The government needs to have a serious relationship with the stakeholders and the service providers who provide such services and hold them to a certain standard that is acceptable to the majority of the population, not if all of the population. That is one. When it comes to persons knowing how to use the technology, certain responsibility is on yourself and also on the private and public sector to disseminate information, how to properly maneuver this technology. So that would be my contribution. I'll leave the rest for the rest of panelists to contribute.
Yeah, who else wanted to jump in there? Let's hear from Varsha or Sage. Varsha, you want to chime in, or Sage, one of you?
I think the other panelists just before me mentioned it's exactly how I wanted to talk about it,
Okay.
where they have to have this level of threshold where they need to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
So he summarized it pretty well, actually.
Okay. Sage.
Yeah, I would kind of want to piggyback on the idea that a lot of it, well, maybe half and half, it comes from personal decision, because let's say we're focusing on the older generation who may not be as adept in technology. We have certain older folks who do not know and do not want to know, whereas they have the ones who are really trying to move with the times. So I don't think it might be as possible to get a total computer literacy down. But I think that we definitely should have programs where people have free access to these kinds of courses so that they are computer literate and able to move with the times, able to pay their bills online and do whatever needs to be done for their conveniences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Lorenzo, I will get back to you. We have I guess it's a rebuttal. I wouldn't call it a rebuttal, but somebody was making a point here. This asking, while funding is allocated, the ongoing issue is land tenure. So farmers do not have access to the funding set aside for agriculture. How do we address that issue?
Well, I know for the land situation in Trinidad especially, there are a lot of agricultural land, but it's not sold to the farmers, it's leased to them, right? And we do have a lot of subsidies and monies that allocated to farmers once they can prove that they are really farmers and they do grow crops and they rear livestock. They do get a lot of concessions, and land is one of them, right? We have state lands available. So I'm not sure how it is in other Caribbean countries, but I think the land is there, it is available, and there are means of engaging with the agricultural division within the government to get lands to do agriculture, right?
And then another audience member is saying, so why not incorporate technology into agriculture? That is how the world is going. Let the machines do the laborious work, initiatives that are properly disbursed. I think really what it is, to summarize here, it's about working smart, not hard. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and that will tie into the point where I made, where we need to train, all right? We need to train and educate people on the modern techniques of agriculture. What the existing farmers can see, techniques or methods they can implement to make their business more profitable, right? To make it more efficient. And all of that comes in with the training and the education and the exposure. I don't know if you remember when I said, we need to expose our people who are interested in agriculture to all of these new technologies, these new methods of farming. If the information, the technology is out there, but we need to expose our people to it. Not all of them will be online researching, looking for better ways, looking for newer technology, right? Sometimes we need to put it in front of them to open their eyes, and they will see ways where they can implement it or use it.
Okay, and Gershom, I'm going to get back to you here. And I think this, because we're still in the middle of this COVID pandemic, the question here is, how can technology be applied to various sectors, including education, health, in the COVID-19 pandemic planning and response process?
You sort of broke up there, Doctor. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, let me repeat the question. The question is, how can technology be applied to the various sectors of the economy in the COVID-19 planning and response?
Well, the technology, as I said earlier, persons need to know how to use the technology. Once we get that up and running, then we could decide how we are going to channel it to positively affect certain sectors. Yeah. So at the moment, COVID-19 is upon us. We want to social distance, right? Less movement. We don't really want much physical movement. And this is an ideal situation where we could really take it upon ourselves now to implement these kind of strategies with the necessary stakeholders that would impact after COVID-19 have passed, because it will, after it has passed, so that we move more efficiently, saving time and money in the way we do business and go about our day.
But what do you think we have learned in this process? I mean, you know, we talk about just these futuristic ways of thinking about things, but in the concrete right now, what do you think we've learned? How have we innovated in this period?
I think, for example, myself, I think we have learned a lot of things we don't need to do in person. A lot of things we could literally do from the couch and from our homes. Whereas we go to work 5 days, 6 days a week, we could simply go to work twice a week, saving on the environment via pollution, saving on the cost of the employee and the cost of the employer. Less persons at the workplace means less building space to rent or to own. And persons have been proven to be more productive working from the comfort of their home. So that is one of the things I hope that employers and government realize. I hope we do a study and really look back to see the productivity during COVID and after COVID, and even before COVID, to see how we move forward. I know some persons believe in tradition and believe that we must get up every morning from 6 to 6 and go to work. But I think moving and keeping in trend with the developed countries, we should really look at this and learn from it. And hopefully we are a more efficient and effective economy moving forward.
And I want the rest of the panel to chime in on the same question. In your various subsectors, what new and realistic innovations have come out of say, and you know, Sage, you spoke articulately about just that hybrid model of education, but Varsha and Lorenzo, I want to hear from you. How do you think this pandemic period has spurned a lot of new innovations that were on the back burner for a while?
So for me, I would talk about what I noticed is that Trinidad and Tobago, we have understood that we needed to develop in information technology, right? In this whole new idea, something that we have never really put a lot of thought into before. So we came up with a Ministry of Digital Transformation. That shocked me because that was, to me, that's a back burner. Nobody would have put a lot of thought into that before. And now it's a thing where people would eventually be able to, government services will be using this technology so that I could pay for my driver's permit or my ID card online, or with a links card, or even with the internet, or just with a simple phone. I no longer have to traditionally line up to go get these things done. That's one way of looking at it, especially with the banking sector. Things like, I know there's a program called FinTech. It's financial technology, and it places emphasis on using your phones and making payments and everything through your phones. So for example, I know India and Asia, they have reached this level of advancement, and it's about time that our developing countries started to reach there, which we're trying. And we just needed a phone, a simple thing like a phone. Everybody has a phone. We just need a phone, and we use it as a way forward. It drives us forward. To me, that was easier. You are able to now transfer money So let's just say I have a relative in Barbados. Instead of me doing the whole money transfer and paying extra fees with the money transfer, I could just simply, with a click of a button, send money to my relative in Barbados. So that's my little input on it.
And Gerald, of course, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. I think in this period, the artists in the Caribbean, the idea of a starving artist, I think it really came into the fore during this period. What kinds of innovations have those in the creative and cultural industries come up with that you think would really be transformational in this period?
So as Asper mentioned, there are certain innovations such as virtual tours for museums. There are virtual concerts for people in the music industry. There are the allowance of e-commerce in the orange economy for just allowing you to be able to enjoy the cultural experience from the comfort of your home. Technology, as I said before, is the savior of art. Through technology, we are able to express our cultural flavor to anybody around the world who is interested. I think that's very powerful for our economy.
And let's hear from Lorenzo and Sage.
Okay, so from my side, the online learning platform, it created an opportunity for me to further my education, because I work full-time and I would not be doing this course in Roytech right now if it was not online, right? So this gave me the opportunity as a full-time working individual to further enhance my educational background. And I'm sure the same way it did it for me, it will do it for a lot of other persons who are working full-time and they just don't have that flexibility to leave work on an afternoon and reach the class on time, because it's all about demographics as well, right? So for me, that was the biggest impact it had in my situation, for people in my situation.
And this is such a thought-provoking conversation. And it's good to really hear your ideas and thoughts with respect to reimagining what Caribbean socioeconomic development would look like for the next 50 years. I know that the late Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Patrick Manning, he had a vision 2020. I do not know that he envisioned the kind of 2020 that we experienced last year and we're currently experiencing. But what does that vision look like for the next 20 years, the next 50 years for the region? So what we want to do is to really wrap up this conversation, and I want to give each panelist an opportunity to present us with some closing remarks, and just put a bow on everything we were discussing today. So who wants to go first? Gershom, I'm going to start with you.
No problem.
Yes.
I thought you'd have done that. On behalf of the University of the Southern Caribbean and myself, Gershom Byng, I would like to thank the University of the West Indies for hosting such
I think we lost his connection there. I don't think it's me. So while we wait on him, Lorenzo, I would go to you next.
Okay, it's my first time being in something like this, so it's I appreciate it very much, right? To know that you and all the other panelists make time to have activities like this to really get input from persons who are going through the education system right now, and not only from one area, from different schools, different countries. So it's really good to see that, where we can all collaborate and see if we are facing the same issues, and maybe we can have the same solutions if we are facing the same issues, right? So really good to see things like this happening, and appreciate it. Appreciate the time that you guys gave to listen to what we had to say and your valuable feedback as well. And I hope to participate in these type of events in the future as well. So thank you very much for your time and listening to what we had to say.
All right, let's hear from Sage.
Yes,
So it's definitely been a good experience to be here today. You know, a really, really thought-provoking conversation, hearing so many different ideas that I probably might not have came up with on my own, and seeing strides to make, to develop throughout this hard time. Again, generally to the education sector, which I had covered, I think that we've learned so much. We've learned that everything doesn't have to remain the same, that change is good. Change is good sometimes. And that we can take these developments from distance learning into the future, whether we implement them from at home or in physical school or in whatever format it may be. Thank you.
And we would hear from Varsha now, and then we would go back to Gershom, and then I would close it with young Gerald there.
Definitely, this was a first to me. It was very informative. Each sector, each conversation with education, student is very informative. What actually got my attention the most was the agriculture and the food security.
Yeah.
It really had me going. Like it was very informative. I really appreciated that one. I really enjoyed that one. So I would like to thank you all for having me. It was an experience. Thank you.
Absolutely. Gershom, we lost you there. Speaking of challenges with technology.
Correct.
Right. We have to come up with best practices and best ways for addressing that particular issue. I don't know what the internet speed is where you are in Trinidad, but I know that in Grenada we have some serious issues with a particular telecommunications company, which I would not name. But Gershom, please proceed.
I was just saying thanks on behalf of my university to the University of the West Indies for having these sort of forums where youth could contribute on these pertinent and current issues. I would like to thank you yourself for making me as a panelist feel very comfortable in contributing. Mr. Lorenzo, I learned a lot in the agricultural sector, and I have taken some notes so that I could use in other debates such as these in helping move forward our country and our region in that aspect. So again, from myself and University of the Southern Caribbean, we thank you and your team, and do have a pleasant day.
All right, Gerald Edwards.
I will firstly thank everyone involved for this educational opportunity. I will be brief. In summary, the Orange economy employs creative individuals to produce cultural goods and services. The pandemic negatively affected the economy, especially in venue-based sectors, causing low revenue and employment levels. This exposes the structural weakness of the service sector, allowing us to explore the aforementioned alternative through technology. Technology being viewed as a savior of art and the contemporary driver of the Orange economy, I encourage the investment in digital infrastructure. I encourage investment into industries in the Orange economy as a whole in order to stimulate sustainable growth. We are resilient Caribbean people with the human resources to compete in the global creative economy. Our culture is like no other, and it is time we show greater appreciation for it and tap into our vast knowledge base to evolve from the old-fashioned outlook on our economy. Again, I plead to put on the cultural lens to all government decision-making to bring forward a sustainable, vibrant TNT. I also appreciate the contributions of the other panelists to widen my perspectives on the Caribbean economy and its development. To Sahadeo, I hope to take these points and debate next week. Can't wait for that healthy competition. Thank you very much for the invitation and listening to my exposition.
Very well. In Grenada Presentation College is a fierce competitor in debating competition. So I'm rooting for you there. So thank you panelists for this very, very intellectually stimulating conversation. I think it was much more than a theory. You put forward some very concrete and realistic prescriptions for how we can really face the challenge that we're currently confronting in the Caribbean region. And I wish that our policymakers would be able to really take a lot of these ideas on board. And really it's about, as Lorenzo said, it's about implementation. It is one thing to have a talk shop, but it's another thing to ensure that these ideas can be properly implemented. And of course, I wish to thank the University of the West Indies and of course the sponsor for today, First Citizens Bank, for really helping us to put this program together. And now we go over to a musical interlude by Mr. Shazar David, who is a singer and songwriter.
Lord, I thank you for always loving me. I'm nowhere close to a perfect man, and it takes a supernatural love to even understand that beyond the walls, behind the mask and confident smile, was a broken man trying to grow up and make life worthwhile. I know there were times that you probably shouldn't, but I thank you for always loving me. And I know anyone else, they probably wouldn't, but I thank you for always loving me. Now I know there were days I look at myself, I felt like less of a person compared to everyone else. What about this flaw? Too big, too small? Can I exchange? Try to make up for what I felt short. I let sense slip away. When I look in the mirror, I don't like what I see. Oh, I just thank you for always loving me. And I know it gets bad, but you wait patiently. Oh, I just thank you for always loving me. Oh, I just thank you for always loving me. Father, I wanna thank you for always. You just keep loving me, loving me. Thank you for loving me, loving me. I don't know why you keep loving me, loving me. Oh Lord, I thank you for always loving me. Though I know I don't have everything that it takes, you keep loving me. And regardless of every mistake I make, and it probably don't matter what I do or say, oh, even with the pimples on my face, you keep. So you just keep loving me, loving me, loving me, loving me. Lord, I thank you for always loving me. Lord, I thank you for always loving me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. What a dynamic panel. Thank you all for your contribution. Bob, thank you for your good moderation of the panel. Truly appreciated this. Again, discussions of this nature really further highlights the role of human capital in driving or accelerating Caribbean development, linking issues of education, culture, agriculture, all of which are pertinent in moving forward as a region And I particularly like the idea of moving from just strategic thinking to strategic action. And once again, thank you, Dr. Bubb and the spirit of highlighting the talent of our Caribbean youth. We just wanted to highlight that Shazar is actually from the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He could not make it today, and he decided to put all his efforts into creating that lovely video that we just got there. Of course, we would want to thank him for that rendition of that song. It is truly beautiful. We will now turn over to a few ads from our sponsor, and then Mr. Joel Jordan will bring some closing remarks and deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you once again, everyone.
Stop your bow, Mr. Fiddler. Oh, ha, hi. This country so colorful and truly diverse. We're doing our best to put TNT first. Youth success through advancement, we encourage. We proudly supporting the rich cultural heritage, promoting development in the sporting arena, and empowering women for equality of gender. We sustaining the environment and strengthening the society. First citizens helping paint a brighter TNT. Drag your bow, Mr. Fiddler.
Some of the most special things in life take time to come to fruition. And when they do, the rewards can enrich lives for generations to come. The wait is so worth it. Contact the UTC today and get growing.
In the blink of an eye, the world changed forever.
El gobierno dará a conocer en las próximas horas una serie de medidas sanitarias y económicas para seguir enfrentando la pandemia.
Una reunión con el presidente, el jefe de gobierno.
A global crisis of unprecedented proportions, from which no country has escaped. In Latin America, we have faced many challenging times, some more difficult than others. But today, we all understand that solidarity is our biggest strength. "50 years ago, CAF was created with a mission. 5 Andean countries united to promote sustainable development and regional integration, thus improving quality of life and boosting productivity. Today, we are composed by 19 countries and account for over 600 million people. And despite the distance and the barriers that separate us, we must work more united than ever, because only together we will succeed. The world will not be the same, but now we have the opportunity to build an even better one, a more harmonious, cleaner, and efficient planet. And for the challenges that lie ahead, at CAF, we want to say 3 words. Here we are. To build together a region of opportunities, especially for the most vulnerable ones, with infrastructure that improves quality of life and increases connectivity. A region of vibrant cities, of entrepreneurs and businesses committed to their communities, of societies respectful with the natural world that we all share and must care for. At CAF, we have walked along a region for 50 years on its road to progress. Now more than ever, here we are, and here we will remain, firm in our commitment of being the development bank of Latin America.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And I was asked, my name is Gerald Jordan, the co-coordinator of the COTE Youth events. And I was asked this afternoon to bring some words of thanks for all those who really contributed to making this event really special for us today. I'd like to extend a hearty vote of thanks to our main sponsor, of course, First Citizens Bank, for continuing to support COTE youth events. And also, I'd also like to thank our conference sponsors, UTC and CAF Development Bank. To our head of department, Dr. Anne-Marie Mohammed, who has always been supportive of COTE events and who brought greetings. To our moderator, Dr. Kellon Bubb, who really carried the conversation in terms of carrying the conversation and making the linkages, the necessary linkages in terms of accelerating Caribbean development after COVID-19. I'd like to thank our presenters, Ms. Sage Mitchell from Swaha Hindu College, Mr. Gerald Edwards from Presentation College, Shogunas, Ms. Varsha Ramdeo from the University of the West Indies, Mr. Lorenzo Sahadeo from UWI-ROYTEC, Mr. Gershom Byng from the University of the Southern Caribbean. I also want to thank the entertainers who really put forward all their efforts in terms of either creating a video and sending for us or performing live. I'd like to thank the spoken word poet, Mr. Joel Phillip, on his piece, Hurricane Tanti. I'd like to thank singer-songwriter, Mr. Shazar David. And it is with a deep sense of gratitude that I also extend thanks to the COTE Youth Events Subcommittee, made up of Dr. Roxanne Brazan Martin, Mr. Wendell Long, Mr. Pradeep Mathura, Ms. Shania Taylor, Alaria Watts, and Eslon Dumont of the Economic Society of the University of the West Indies. I'd like to thank Mrs. Louise Dionan Dover, who really assisted and supported all of these events. Right? We'd like to thank our conference assistant, Ms. Sidrina Carr, and Ms. Jewel Garrett. Right? I'd also like to place on record our hearty thanks to the following persons for which their technical and logistical support, this event would not be possible. I'd like to thank Ms. Wendy Maynard and the staff at the Office of Marketing and Communications. Right? And I'd also like to thank the Secretariat of the Department of Economics. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to state that we are most grateful to you for attending this afternoon and for contributing for all the discussion that it generated. And I also like to just alert you to the other events that we have in terms of COTE youth events. Next week, Thursday, from 12 to 4, we would have the COTE Youth Knockoff Debate Competition. Right? We have a total of 8 teams, so we have 4 debates going on, which will narrow down into 2 debates, which will be the finals, which is scheduled for the 11th of November from 1 to 4 p.m. Right? And of course, we have our graduate poster competition, which is on the 22nd of November from 1 to 4 as well. Right? I would like to just say thank you again for staying with us and really contributing to this discussion. Have a good afternoon and stay safe.